Hey Tamers, what's up? This is Regina here, and the ban list actually just dropped in Japan. So, as of right now, this Digimon ban list restriction announcement on the 23rd is strictly only for Japan as of right now. We should be getting an announcement soon in English onto when it's going to be, so keep an eye on their socials for that. I just want to go through really quickly what they hit and what they didn't hit because honestly, I think this is a little bit different than what some of us were expecting. So, let's get into it. So, as of right now, as you can see, this is going to be for the 23rd announcement, and they're explaining just stuff for Digimon in there, etc. So, not quite a ban hit. It's more like a restriction list in general. So there's a couple of cards that are being restricted, some unrestricted, and some cards that actually didn't get touched at all. So here we are again. This is going live on the 31st, but again, right now it's just Japan who's going to be getting that list. We're going to see hopefully when they hit it in the States. So the restricted cards, so again, these are going to be cards that you can only have one copy in your deck. The first one that's going to be up is a card that actually a lot of people had on their list. It's going to be that promo Ukomon. This was originally available in the New York demo deck and then was distributed to card shops across the states for like just sort of like whatever event you really wanted to do. I actually gave them out to players at my local card shop just for like participating in some tournaments, just because it was the easiest way to get these promos to their hands. So this Ukomon is kind of insane, honestly. It's a zero cost Ukomon that you evo on top of like any color, and then when it leaves the raising area, or when a Digimon leaves the battle area, essentially you can go ahead and hatch and then gain a memory for it. So the explanation that Bandai gave for why they banned this specific card, so intended to be combined with Louie and used in a variety of decks, but the importance of it ended up being like super fast, so increases the speeds that don't require level 3, and it provides options by securing memory. So there's a difference in power between decks that can use this card and those that can't, resulting in a loss of diversity in those decks. So essentially what they're saying is that this deck just turbo stuff way faster than they thought, and the disparity between decks that would like to use Ukomon and decks that don't use Ukomon is a lot larger than they expected. You might be asking, well, who doesn't run Ukomon in their decks? There's actually a lot of decks out there that don't run Ukomon. This isn't a super great example, but my Eosmon deck actually doesn't run Ukomon anymore just because I found that I didn't need it. But for decks that need the memory or would like to turbo fast or just doesn't care if the Ukomon lives or gets deleted in battle, this is a great card for them, especially when you pair it up with the Koromon egg from BT14 that lets you draw a card when you removed a security stack from your when a card is removed from your opponent's security stack. So I 100% agree with this one. I actually am personally surprised that it got hit just because of everything that's been going on. I don't feel like it's as much of a problem, but again, I'm one of the weird ones who's not running that many Ukomon. Louie got hit. So Louie is the card that it's supposed to be pairing up with here. So it's the 3-cost one on play. You can move a card from your reading area up to the battle area. And then whenever on your turn, when a card from your reading area is moved up, you can tap the Tamer to gain a memory. So when you pair this with Ukomon actually on turn 1, essentially, you can choke your opponent to like what, 1 memory, and you have a body out on the field that's already ready for next turn. You have an egg that can happen in the back. If you're going second, it's even better because there's a high chance that you keep your turn and you can start building again in the back and get a check in with the Ukomon if you are so inclined to. However, what's important is what Bandai said about this deck specifically and how and why they decided to go for the restriction on this. So by repeatedly combining effects that aren't once per turn, such as BT6 Matt Ishida with its card's on play effect, the game speed accelerates dramatically. So the BT6 Matt Ishida, for those of you who might not be aware of it, is otherwise known as the Gabumon Matt Ishida. It's the one that says when a Gabumon is moved from your raising to your battle area, you gain a memory and draw one. It is not once per turn because back then Digimon was relatively fair, which meant that for that Gabumon deck, there was no way to actually hatch stuff in your breeding area again after your Gabumon moved up, unless I think the only card at that time was literally just the green Memory Tamer Mini. And so, Gabumon was fair-ish at the time of its inception, but people found a way that say, hey, if you play the Louie in here, the Gabumon, and the Met is not once per turn, you get extra draw, you get a bunch of memory back from it, and you basically just have ways of just recycling it. So I actually 100% agree with that in this sort of reasoning. Overall, I think Louie itself is a semi-weak tamer in a lot of ways, just because you have to pair it with the Ukomon. And sometimes you don't need the Louie, but you want the Ukomon. So let's see, because various decks use countermeasures against the combination, decks that are strongly affected by the countermeasure no longer perform as effectively as they should. So essentially, they're saying because you're trying to counter deck stuff, your deck isn't performing the way it needs to, and so they're trying to hit this up one. I actually think that's really funny because I think their reasoning for it with the Gabuban mechanic, I 1000% agree with on this one. This one's the funny one. So Hammer Spark. Guys, Hammer Spark has come a very, very long way. Someone who's played this game basically since the beginning. It's so wild to see this card on. This is... It is now joining Ice Wall, essentially, and that is such an interesting thought to, like, see after years of playing this game. So, the starter deck, Hammer Spark, the 0 cost that basically gives you memory, and then if you hit it in security, you gain memory, so it does get stopped by memory floodgates. I think it's so wild that they actually hit this. I was completely taken aback by that. I was not expecting it. I did notice that the price completely shot up. Starter deck Hammer Sparks went from under $1 at some point to legitimately like about $2.50 to $5, which was honestly for a card like this was really wild, especially after it had fallen off so hard. So Bandai's reasoning is it's been used in decks that include blue cards for a long time, but the increased variety of cards available allows for more card drawing, making it possible to have multiple cards in the hand and use them consecutively of one turn. So essentially, you pay the 0 cost for it, and you can just keep getting back all of that memory, and it extends your turns. So as a result, this has become easier to speed up the game, widening the gap between decks that can use this card and others. There's not very many cards like this. Sure, you could argue for Jack Raid. Jack Raid is the 0 cost purple option. However, Jack Raid gives you 1 memory for every 10 cards in your trash. So there is some requirement in there, whereas Hammer Spark just gives you the free memory. And honestly, as much as it pains me to say it, because I do love my Hammer Sparks, I can see why they decided to go ahead and restrict this to 1. It is really fascinating as someone, again, who has been playing this game basically since the beginning, to see it join the likes of Ice Wall. I think that with the advent of blue decks in this meta, I can see why they decided to say, hey, maybe 0 for some memory is not great. Rip Hammer Spark, you were great while you lasted. I'm going to miss you at 4 of. I gotta go find all my copies to have a little mourning ceremony. But, well, you and Ice Wall can have fun together, I guess. And then here's the next one, which is Awakening of the Golden Knight. I'm personally very happy about this. I cannot stand Magnamon. I can't stand Yellow Vaccine, and to see this card get hit, chef's kiss, beautiful, love it, thank you. I am actually really surprised that Bandai decided to go ahead and hit this. Not because that the card is good and it should have gotten hit, but it's so rare, I think, to be pleasantly surprised by how a restricted list actually affects cards and decks that are considered semi-oppressive. So card is used in decks that mainly use Numon X Antibody, which has a high usage rate in recent game. When combined with cards such as level 3 cards that support Digivolution, it was possible to keep this Numon X on the board early and move toward attacking. So essentially, instead of paying the 4 or 5 that you would for the evolution cost, which is honestly not a terrible evolution cost for what the Numon X Antibody does. Instead, you're paying 3, being able to evolve for 3, and you can keep turning a lot of ways. And honestly, when you combine that with the Hammer Spark, you could legitimately just go into the Magna X that same turn. The above play is very powerful in create a situation that many decks can't handle. This is correct. Numon X Antibody, for those of you who are playing semi-recently, it's Numon X is one of those few times that a secret is a secret for a good reason, and it was expensive for that very same good reason. You literally could not play the deck at its most powerful without having 4 of them, and for the way that Digimon's been for the past couple of sets, if not the past year and a half, it's kind of ridiculous to see how oppressive Magnamon really felt. And I don't like to say that a lot about decks because I think Digimon is really diverse for the most part, but that Magnamon deck, I don't have fun when I play against it. I sit down, see them play Magnamon, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, fun. And if I'm going to be honest, it's not actually regular Magnamon, it's the yellow vaccine version, so, Now here's one that people were sort of expecting to get hit. Numon has sort of been a problem in a lot of metas for people, right? You spit out bodies super fast, you can recover really quickly, and essentially with the Ukon combo, you can go from 0 bodies to 5 in a turn, and it just goes fast. So I can see why people are wanting Numon to be hit. Numon X Antibody being the card that got hit was actually a huge thing for a lot of people. It was definitely on a lot of people's hit list for this restriction announcement. So Numon X Antibody is the card, I think that was the big, oops, sorry, spoiler, was like the big problem for a lot of people. So when using Numon decks, this card has high board retention from the beginning of the game, and its inherited effect can be reused when combined with other cards. So they're saying that this card actually just makes the whole deck work and kind of run. So in addition, since the level 6 can also be played by its effect, yeah, looking at you, Platinum Numemon, it's easy to devolve from there to a level 7, which has a higher output to create a one-sided control of board. So yeah, no, that's fair, right? The entire goal of the deck is that you just go to Numon X Antibody, you have Platinum Numemon in trash, you can play the Platinum Numemon in trash, grab and like gain memory back, and then you maybe have a way to kill to like delete your own Platinum Numemon, or at least you have a level 6 that stays on the field that's able to play cards out later on. Either way, you have a level 6 that people don't usually want to try to delete. So for the reasons stated above, they expect this card to play a very large role, resulting in a loss of diversity in the cards included. That's fair. I don't know what you would actually replace Numemon X Antibody for. It's kind of difficult, especially because they're also hitting the Ukon that would go in this deck. Reasons above, we decided to fix this card to 1 per deck. You know what, I expect we'll see probably an increase of people playing the Rush Satsuki Numemon and a Satsuki inside the decks just to replace that, because now you're having, 3 copies of Numemon X that you have to replace, and then 3 copies of Ukon that you have to replace, so we'll probably be seeing more Rush Numemons, Satsukis, and then probably more Chumons and things that can, like, at least control memory, or cards that can play by effect stuff, right? I 100% agree with the Numon X Antibody, and we're going to move on to I think what is my favorite restriction hit of this set, the BT14 TK. So, all cards on the table actually just came back from a local today where this was my round 1, and I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to play against Yellow Vaccine. For those of you who know, you know. For those of you who have somehow managed to not play against Yellow Vaccine, please tell me where you're playing, because I would love to be there. So, having multiples of this card in play makes it easy to continuously and significantly increase memory. That's so crazy, huh? Guaranteeing stability in Yellow Vaccine decks and others that use this card. It's just honestly Yellow Vaccine at this point. I don't know any other decks that really run it, and if they do, I haven't run into them, and I'm so happy for that, because I don't know that I can handle another deck running this TK. Also, this card's role throughout the entire game becomes significant since the effect which increases or decreases security costs can be activated for a low memory cost. Yes, that's correct. And then having memory gained after recovery effects lets the player do more and make matches take excessively longer. Hey, fun fact, did you know that most of your matches against Yellow Vaccine will probably only be 1.5 games? Why? Because your game 1 will take so long that you won't really have time for game 2 or 3. Or your game 1 will take relatively long, your game 2 will be the rest of your round. For a game that has 45 minutes for 3 matches and 5 turns overtime, that's insane. 45 minutes for 1 game. Like, I don't know, we're not One Piece. One Piece takes, 30 minutes for, 1 game? And, at least theirs requires some, they're used to that, right? We haven't really had this sort of repression since security control was really at its peak. I really, really love that they limited this. I think the TK and Patamon combo with the Magnumon X is just, it is so frustrating to sit through, and I try my best not to rag on a lot of different other decks, because I think Digimon at its core is a very, very diverse game. This one is just between the rapid mons that you can just go ahead and put inside your security to evo into with emissary. This is honestly just, it's so rough when you're playing against 4 of them, because then not only do they evo for free with their Patamons and their emissaries, so I guess 1 for their emissaries, right? You get all that memory back, and then you get the memory back from their hairs, and so I 1000% agree with this, and I'm so happy that they hit it, and I cannot wait for this restriction to hit North America, or the English version of the game in all other regions. And now here's the funny part. The restricted cards are going to be lifted from August 31st for this one. This started at Gabu. So originally they banned this card because they were like, hey, people are trashing too fast, and that's kind of not great. And now, interestingly enough, in past game environments when this card was widely used, by combining it with a Digimon that had an effect that let it attack consecutively, and attacking its inherited effect that doesn't have once per turn, it increased the speed and consistency of decks that made use of the trash. However, as the card pool has increased in recent game environments, there are now more ways to suppress attacks. Because of this, we have determined that it has become more difficult to consistently activate this card's effect multiple times compared to before. So now, your starter deck Gabumons are free once more to reign. I find this absolutely fascinating. I don't play purple a lot, so I actually never really had to use this Gabumon, honestly. But I think that it's interesting that they are unbanning this. I look forward to seeing how it's going to work out. Now, let's talk about a couple things that they did not actually hit. So that's the restriction list that they are announcing again. This is going to be live on the 31st. So what did they not hit? They didn't hit monai X. Monai X is going to be the yellow one that goes on top of a Monzaimon, or can have the X Antibody in there, that lets you play out a card, a level 3 or something that has the Numon in its name, right? Sorry, level 5 or lower with the Numon in its name. So the big thing about that they didn't hit, I'm genuinely surprised too, is because all turns, when you play a Digimon, not even by an effect, but when you play a Digimon, one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 3k for each Digimon you have on your field. What I find fascinating about this is one of my friends on Twitter did point out that to them, hitting the Monzaimon X was more important than Numon X, because the Monzaimon X is really what makes them feel that the deck is super oppressive. And I actually kind of agree with that. I think the Monzaimon X is a little bit of just as oppressive as the Numon X. I can see why they didn't hit both, because they're already hitting a bunch of parts of that Numon deck. If you hit the Monzai X as well, then you're sort of just effectively killing the deck. At least, I guess in Bandai's mind, at least that way they have a little bit of wiggle room in terms of being able to play out all of those cards, right? The other big one that people I think were hoping to get hit that didn't actually get hit would be the other Ukomon. So the one that we just got in BT16 Beginning Observer. It's the rare Ukon that evolves for 1, and then when a Digimon's moved from your breeding area to your battle area, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and you add a Tamer or a Digimon from there. So for a lot of people, right, you're not really running super option-heavy decks anymore lately, and so I think for a lot of players, that one not getting restricted or hit in any way, shape, or form is wild, because it gives you free searches and it adds cards to your hand, and 90% of the time you're always going to find a hit, right? It helps you fix your hand, it helps you like get game plans going on, and it helps you like filter your deck a little bit. Sure, you might hit an option, sure you might have to make a choice between a Tamer or a Digimon that you didn't want to make, but the important part is it lets you go through your deck a little bit faster. My personal opinion is the reason I didn't get hit was because it requires the card being moved from your the other effect for the Ukon is that you can hatch right after. But I think the big reason why they didn't hit that one is because it costs 1 to Evo, and it requires you to consistently move stuff up from your breeding area. So I think that one is a little bit less powerful in their mind compared to the promo Uko. I think they're both kind of annoying in all honesty. But my personal take is I would rather run the 0 cost Evo, so the promo Uko, over the 1 cost evolution. 1, because 1, I hate paying 1 for an evolution if I don't have to. And 2, there's very few times where I actually want to search for cards in my deck that way. I would rather use like thematic searchers, and by that I mean like if I'm playing a Sukuyumon deck, I'd rather use the Renamon to search, or I'd rather use like something like maybe a memory boost or maybe a training, right? This is very rarely that I ever wanted to use that Ukomon. I think it was actually some of the first cards that I cut when I was deck building. You can call me a bad deck builder, that's totally fine. My personal opinion is I don't have an issue with that Ukomon not getting touched. The other big one, and I kind of wish they actually had hit this deck, was the Ken Davis Tamer. So the dual Ken Davis Tamer that came out of BT16. I hate this card. It's genuinely, I think this card does so much. It's the one that says, hey, start of your turn, you can go ahead, start of your main phase, you can go ahead and play a Vmon or a Wormmon without paying its cost, and then at the end of your opponent's turn, that card gets added back to your hand. That's so crazy. Also, when you evo into a blue or green Digimon, you can suspend it, gain a memory. If you're DNA Digivolving, you can strip any 3 sources. Yeah, that's right. Any 3 sources. It does not matter which ones they are. And Imperial just goes fast already, and it just goes so much faster with this, right? And they don't even really need the Hammer Spark. So the Hammer Sparks getting a hit is fine, and it kind of hurts maybe Imperial, but I don't think it hits them as much as it does like sort of the ancient Gurumon decks that are here, or like Gabumon decks. I am actually really surprised that they didn't touch that deck at all for the Imperial deck. It's look, you can be in such a great spot against Imperial. You swing at security, you hit one of those Tamers, and it's like, oh cool, game over, let me just shake out your hand across the table, let's go to game 2, or let me just scoop around, right? And it's such a, for me, it feels like such a terrible card design if like when you hit that card, your first thought is, I just lose because I hit that card, right? And it's the fact that you can just run a 4 of them in the deck and it's totally fine, and just you can strip any 3 sources. It's honestly wild, right? Because then you don't get punished for like playing the card that you played at the beginning of your turn. So I don't know. For me, I think that one was surprising to not hit. And the last one is I know some people, including myself, were thinking that they were gonna look at the the Shoto mother combo that's really prevalent right now. Obviously, we don't have it yet in the English version yet because the starter decks haven't come out. They are out. Sorry, the starter decks and the Liberator stuff hasn't come out yet. Those will be out in the later half of this year. Actually, they're coming out soon. September is when the starter decks come out. That's crazy. Where did the year go, guys? It basically makes the Mother D Reaper deck playable again, and it makes your Mother's a 15k blocker that can't be affected by Digimon effects, so kind of wild. Um, I personally thought that they were going to touch that. Maybe they won't touch it for a little bit longer until it actually gets really oppressive. In my opinion, I think they should have preemptively gone after it and done like a pair restriction like they did with the Ko and Zubamon, which actually you can see right down where you're here, yeah. So like they, pair restricted it, so like you can't have both of these in the deck. I don't think they should hit Shoto just because you kill Liberator decks immediately before they even have a chance to play, and that's not fun. So for me, those are the surprising ones. I overall though really really love this restricted list. I think they hit a lot of cards that should have been hit. And I think it opens up competitive play to a little bit more diversity and gives everybody a little bit more breathing room, right? There are some decks out there that are just, they're good for a reason, and you see them at the top of deck lists or the top of like regionals and events for a good reason. So I think I am pleasantly surprised by Bandai's action on this. I go into restriction announcements with very little expectation, so I'm always pleasantly surprised. But this one actually just blew my expectations out of the water. Like, in all honesty, um, I am super happy that they hit the TK. Just so beautiful. Love that. I love that they hit the TK, and I love that they hit the Awakening of the Golden Knight. So I can't wait to see these come to the English version of the game, and I'm super excited. But anyway, that's all my thoughts for this. And hey, you know what? If you have your own thoughts, comments, concerns, what you think about the ban list or restricted list, if you thought they were too lenient on it, if they need to hit more, what like they should have hit, what they shouldn't have hit, let me know. I'm always curious to know how other players think, just because obviously I am one person in this sea of Digimon players out there, and I have my own thoughts and feelings about it, and so do you. So I'd love to hear what you think about this restriction list, and did Bandai go too far? Did they not go far enough? Anyway, thanks for listening, and hope to hear from you soon. Bye!